Light bulb moments. We have all had them. Maybe it's in a relationship or in a job or related to money. And, this is Moolala. So we're talking about light bulb moments when it relates to money. And we're going to do this as a sort of a series of interviews with people who have had these light bulb moments. We're beginning with Shannon Lee Simmons. She is an author, a fee-only planner. She is the founder of the New School of Finance. And our focus today is the emergency fund. Hello there.
Hello. Very excited to talk emergency funds.
So excited to talk about emergency funds. You had a light bulb moment here. So there was a point in your life at which this was not crystallized as a big idea. And then in a moment, it was. What happened?
I was young, but it still happened. And I have a core memory of this happening to me. So my parents, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and family businesses. And when I was 10 years old, my parents lost their family business and I watched like a car get towed out of our driveway. And it was I was in private school the whole bit and everything stopped. So we had a whole life trajectory. We had friends, family friends, like, oh, we were in the neighborhood and we brought some groceries. My mom was taking gas money out of my piggy bank. Bad times. So but it sounds very traumatic. And yet I tell this story as this really wonderful thing that happened to me in my life because we had it going on. We literally lost everything. And I watched my family pull together and work tirelessly and completely rebuild. And so the light bulb moment for me didn't necessarily, I guess it was a slower switch, like a dimmer.
Mm.
And I realized that sometimes you're up and sometimes you're not. But the good times aren't forever and the bad times aren't forever either. And as long as you can like keep calm and don't lose hope, like don't give up, you can still be okay. And learning that fierce lesson at such a young age, I think is why I'm in this business to begin with, because money was like a thing that fascinated me from then on. And two, in my insight of it now is like in my own business, in my own finances, when there's threats of all this bad stuff happening, I'm like, everything will be okay in the long run because I have faith in myself to like weather a storm. And I think that that was like such an important moment in my life that like everything's going to be okay as long as you don't lose faith.
That's extraordinary. That is extraordinary. Now, that manifests to the idea of some emergency preparedness.
Big
One,
time.
one of those things, which your family clearly did not have at
Did
that
not
time,
have,
did
no.
not have. Roll back the clock, mom and dad. Be
Yeah.
really helpful if we had this thing.
Yep.
It's called an emergency fund. So, where did you make that connection to this incredible aha moment? And actually, there are some things that you could do to
Yeah.
mitigate the risk of being an entrepreneur or any life event.
I think two things, well, of many things I've learned from that. But number one, like I think not ever having, like always knowing what would happen if all of a sudden the income taps got turned off. I have spent my entire teen and adult life whenever I'm about to go to school, if I was about to start the business, if I was about to buy a house, I'm like, what happens if the income tap turns off? And I don't know that every young person is thinking about that in such a dramatic way that I
Mm,
was, right?
mm,
And I don't even know that some of the adult clients I work with have really thought about like a dramatic turning off of the income. COVID was, in a weird way, the first time that so many people have thought about, oh my God, I just lost my job overnight and I wasn't prepared. So the income tap turning off is something that like is a lesson that I took and it's context for everything that I do in my business and
mm,
everything. And that comes down to an emergency account, right?
mm.
I always make sure that I have enough. I call it like mad money. It's a thing my grandma used to say. I have enough like mad money on the side that if life goes wild, that I could like pay my bills and
Mm.
eat. It's not the biggest, but it's like I could pay my bills and eat for at least 3 months so I get my like stuff in order and like figure
Yeah.
out what's happening next and like what I'm gonna do. And that I will forego other goals in life to keep that emergency account intact. And it's not the same as a slush fund. I don't touch it.
Mm.
It's like that stays there. And that is a trauma response to what happened to me, but also
Sure.
it allows me to sleep at night at 3 in the morning. You know, when there's all this stuff happening, I'm like, it's okay. I've got this warm blanket of like financial calm, and it's okay.
Mm. One of the challenges with this conversation about emergency fund that I find is that people hear the expert's opinion about how
Yes.
much you should have in your emergency fund,
Yes.
and they don't customize it to their own personal experience. So when you hear, like, if you were to do a search for what that number is, it can be prohibitive. It
I
can be
think it is. Yeah.
impossible for people to even wrap their minds around. And for some people, not remotely necessary because of their circumstances. So, what are some things, what are some questions that you would ask people to think through to determine what practically makes sense and
Yeah.
what psychologically makes sense in terms of that, the dollars, the amount in that fund?
Right. And so I don't think everyone needs to have 3 months of bills and groceries saved up. Sure, that would be nice. And that's what I say it's a kind of a trauma response. But it's not realistic. And also, I'm an entrepreneur, so I look at my life differently. The income taps are different for me. What I would say and what I tell all my clients about an emergency account is that the act of saving is more important than the dollar amount. So for
Mm.
example, I have this client, I'll never forget it. In fact, I think this is in Worry Free Money, this story, because I tell it a lot. It's a good one. So he was like, I want to get to $5,000. And I'm like, why? Do you know what I mean? Like it's an arbitrary. And his goal was like, I don't want to pay fees. Fine. Okay. So he was like putting aside money, and then, you know, bike got stolen, and then computer broke, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I met with him like a year later, and he was like, I'm frustrated. Like I can't build my emergency savings up. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, I kept putting aside, you know, the or the $200 or whatever it was I was supposed to do every month. But then like things kept happening and I kept having to dip into it. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's working beautifully because he was putting money aside and then using it in an emergency. So it's
Oh,
not really
great.
about reaching the 5 or the 10 or the 6 or the 3 or the 2 or whatever it is that you're trying to get to. It's more about the act of putting some money aside so that
Mm.
when life throws you a financial curveball that's above and beyond what you would normally be able to handle on a paycheck or in a month,
Mm.
you've got some money sitting there that can help to offset it. Because when life throws you a financial curveball, it doesn't have to be as dramatic as my light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Um, lemons happen all the time. When that happens to you, even if you don't have enough saved up to quote bail you out, the fact that you had some saved up is psychologically helpful and
Mm.
hopeful in a down moment. And because it means it's not going to go to debt. The only purpose of an emergency account, as you know, Bruce, is like to keep you out of debt. It's not there to grow your money. It's not there to provide future retirement income. It's there to keep
Yeah.
you out of debt. And so if you're able to do a little bit of that, it makes you feel more in control when things are out of control, and it makes you feel, which means that you can like not panic as much. So there's so many psychological benefits to having even something. $50 doesn't matter. That's the psychological and emotional side to it, that I think it doesn't even matter what the dollar amount is. It's literally just the act of saving anything.
Mm.
And as far as a dollar amount goes, sure, 3 months would be great. I don't think anyone can. I don't think like most people can't get there because it's so like not feasible for people to have you know, $7,000 to $10,000 sitting in a checking or sitting in a high interest rate savings account. So for me, I usually just say to people like enough that you could at least make 1 month, a 1 month go. Like give yourself, like if the income tap turned off, could you get through the next set of bills
Mm.
and the next cycle? And if you
Mm.
could do that, then you can at least give yourself like a minute. You have like a minute to breathe or something like
Yeah.
that. But I think it's a tricky one to come up with the dollars.
I agree, and I love the level to which you engage in like the practical question of, so there's no income, what happens? How do the bills get paid? And
Yeah.
also the emotional part, which for some people can amp high, and some people can amp low. I am someone who takes the case that I never have emergencies. And for the most part, I actually don't, which may sound like really diluted. I do have unpredictable expenses. Stuff happens to me. I
Yeah.
just don't relate to it as an emergency. And as a kind of compulsive live within your means person, I have the ability to do that such that my emergency fund is not a separate account. It's a secured line of credit, which for some people would not. You just made a very big facial expression right there. I love it.
Good. I
But
did.
because I operate at a surplus, taking out debt would not be problematic because I would be able to pay it off in short order.
Well,
So I
that's it.
think
Yeah.
it also depends in a two income household, how risky is one income. And my husband had a job, and I was the entrepreneur. And then I had a job, and he was the entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Two entrepreneurs, completely different game. Two civil servants, completely different game. So I
Yes.
think there's something really like that's really individual about the plan that you create for yourself. Does that make sense?
And that's exactly why I think we both have jobs. I think it is a custom thing. And I think most people think that you have to customize your retirement plan. I'm like, also your emergency funds, because not everything is created equal. And I love what you're saying about you don't register it as an emergency, whereas somebody else would. And I think it's
Yeah.
because you have that financial blanket of calm. So,
Yeah.
you know, I have some clients where it's like, the roof is leaking and it's 15,000 and they're like, what a bummer. And then I have some people who they have something that's $500 of a repair and they can't sleep. And
Yeah.
it's about the level of secure that you feel overall in the holistic thing. So I would say, like, and that's also what financial planning can help with, is like if you have faith in the bigger picture, then you don't sweat the small stuff as much, I think.
Yeah. I think the other layer that I'd have here in terms of periods of emergency is you may not have any control about the income, but as you had to do as a young person, as your family
Mm,
had to do, you slashed all the expenses.
yes.
And so there was a way to mitigate that. That wasn't just even if you'd had an emergency fund, you probably would have taken some pretty dramatic actions. And that can be a part of the plan, not fun, but a
No.
part of the plan that keeps you afloat.
Yeah, and that's why I always, when I'm trying to get to that number with people, I'm never like, just take your income and multiply it by 3. Because if you're in an actual true sort of situation where you need to replace income or like something bad has happened, you're in control of those expenses. So we're really just talking bills and food. We are not
Right.
talking getting your hair done. We're not talking like
Yeah.
going out. We're not talking about that. And so that can also really help people feel like, oh, well, I don't need to replace my household spending for 3 months. I just
Yeah.
need literally the bills and the groceries.
Utilities. I
And that's
need
it. That's
electricity,
right. And my
gas.
rent and my grocery bill, and that's it.
I want to ask one last question. So this is what you do every day, but you have clients who present with they're like la 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 la. They aren't oblivious. So they're not people who amp high on
Yeah.
fear. They're just oblivious. How do you engage with them to say, listen, I'm not saying it's going to happen and I don't want to freak you out,
Yeah.
but it could, and your plan is insufficient based on the life that you live. How do you flick the switch for them?
So if it comes to short-term emergency planning and stuff like that, I'm going to say something that sounds so like tough love, but like sometimes it's like I have kids, sometimes the natural consequence is the only way that they're going to learn, because you can tell your kid to take their raincoat, but until it rains, they're going to think you're dumb. And so I feel like, again, COVID has made this easier for me to convince people of an emergency, that things like that are possible, things that
Mm.
you couldn't even think about. And so even though that's not the average emergency for most people, these extreme situations, I think what it did is sort of turn the light switch on, like, oh my God, like maybe
Mm.
that's the light switch moment for so many people,
Mm.
that overnight, seemingly our world shifted and like something like that is possible. And so what I think is like, what I try to tell people is the reason why, and this is especially hard if one partner is in and one is not, but that's a tricky situation.
Mm.
So the compromise I'll usually make is that we dumb it down to a very small amount of money, because typically I hear people say it's just a waste and I have a line of credit. It's a waste. I could invest it. I could do this. Why would I do that? Why would I keep it on the sidelines and I have a line of credit? This is the big pushback I get. And so, similar to what you're saying too earlier, I'll say, okay, fine. I have nothing to gain here from you saving for an emergency or not. So why don't we just put something aside, just so it's there, like a very small amount, and then you can use your line of credit. But let's earmark money that's in the TFSA or something like that. That if you got into a sticky situation, you would be able to withdraw that. And the
Yeah.
risk that you're running is that somehow the markets are down and you're locking in a loss or something like that. So I would
Yeah.
suggest that they keep a portion of the TFSA sort of maybe like in like GIC friendly land or something like that, that could
Yeah.
always be pulled out if it needed to happen, and not lose its value. So that's the compromise I make.
Shannon, thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.
Shannon Lee Simmons, fee only financial planner, founder of New School of Finance. She was here to talk about her light bulb moment as it relates to emergency funds.